Imagine coming home after just over an hour away. What greets you isn't the sound of your kids laughing. It's silence. Your wife is lying motionless beneath a window. Your 3 children are in the basement, and none of them are breathing. That's what a father walked into on a January night in 2023. But to understand how it happened, we have to go back a few months to a woman the whole town once admired. If you watch this till the end, you'll see how a system meant to save someone can fail at every step. And you'll be left with a question that has no easy answer. Where is the line between illness and crime? Before we begin, I need to say something. This story touches on very heavy themes, including the loss of children and suicide. Out of respect for the victims and out of respect for you watching, I'll tell it with care. There are details I won't go into because what matters isn't the details. It's understanding how this was allowed to happen. If you asked anyone who knew Lindsay Clancy before January 2023, they'd have used one word: flawless. Lindsay was a labor and delivery nurse. Her job was to stand beside other women in their most fragile moment in their lives and help bring their children safely into the world. Her co-workers called her devoted. Her patients called her gentle. At home, things weren't much different. She married Patrick in 2016. They had 3 children, a 5-year-old girl, a 3-year-old boy, and a baby, only 8 months old. Walk into their house and you'd see walls covered in hand-drawn art, alphabet charts taped beside the fridge, family photos lining the hallway. The kind of home people looked at and thought, here is a family doing everything right. Patrick loved his wife so much that when she began to struggle, both sets of grandparents took turns moving in, just to help for a few weeks. And no one blamed her, no one suspected her. But beneath that spotless surface, something had been quietly growing. Something that not even Patrick, the man who slept beside her every night, could see. Because it didn't look the way people imagine mental illness is supposed to look like. There was no screaming in the night. Lindsay still smiled, still cooked dinner, still tucked her kids in. So what was actually happening inside her mind? The answer, it turns out, had already been written down. Alone, in the middle of the night when no one else was watching. And those words, months later, would be used against her in a courtroom. Her doctor had told her to write down everything she felt. No one imagined that journal would one day end up in a courtroom. After giving birth to her 3rd child, Lindsay began to feel that something was wrong. She told her doctor that she felt emotionally numb, that she couldn't feel love anymore, not for her husband, not even for her own children. She hesitated about medication. She wanted to try therapy first. It was the reaction of someone still lucid enough to be afraid of what the drugs might do to her. But slowly, she agreed. Her doctor told her to write everything down. Every dose, every reaction, every sleepless night. And because Lindsay was a nurse, she did it meticulously, precise, down to the smallest detail. But no one noticed that between the notes and dosages, other lines had begun to creep in. One night, she wrote that she resented her 2 older children, that in some way, they were taking away time from the baby. Then only a few lines later, she wrote that she wished she could feel love and connection with all of her kids. 2 sentences, a few lines apart, a tug of war only she truly understood. This was not the journal of someone planning to hurt anyone, not yet. This was the journal of somebody slowly drowning and trying, in her own way, not to go under. But behind those words, something else was quietly unfolding, not in Lindsay's mind, in the office of the doctor treating her, because over the next 4 months, the very system built to save her would push her deeper in. Here's the number that should stop you cold. In under 4 months, 5 different psychiatric drugs went into Lindsay Clancy's body, and no one ever checked whether she could handle them. September, the first antidepressant. Within a week of a higher dose, she couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, cried for hours. She told her doctor the anxiety was worse than before she'd ever touched medication. That reaction should have stopped everyone. It didn't. No blood work, no second opinion, just more prescriptions. By November, a second drug joined the first, then a third, a fourth, a fifth. A sleep aid, an antidepressant, a sedative, stacked on top of each other. Every time Lindsay said she felt worse, the answer was the same: more. She described it simply: hungover every morning, without ever drinking, disconnected from her own body, genuinely afraid she was becoming addicted to the very pills meant to help her. So investigators later had to ask the obvious question: was this treatment, or just 5 separate people throwing prescriptions at one woman, none of them watching closely enough? In December, Lindsay did something desperate people rarely do. She checked herself voluntarily into a day program for postpartum depression. They turned her away. Her symptoms, they said, looked like over-medication. Then they sent her right back to the team that had caused it. No one took the handoff. No one owned the failure. By mid-January, at her final appointment, the notes were almost routine. Low mood, no motivation, numb. No one in that room had any idea how little time was left. If you looked at Lindsay Clancy's schedule on January 24th, you wouldn't find a single sign that this would be the last day her 3 children were alive. That morning, she took her 5-year-old to the pediatrician's appointment. Nothing unusual was noted. That afternoon, she played with her 2 younger kids in the backyard. People saw them out there. No one was worried. She called the pharmacy to fill a routine prescription. She chose a restaurant for dinner. She placed the order, reciting her husband's name and phone number without a single stumble. Then, she opened a map app on her phone and worked out exactly how long it would take Patrick to drive to the pharmacy, then the restaurant, then back home. This wasn't the behavior of someone in the middle of an acute psychiatric break. This was someone fully lucid, running the ordinary math of an ordinary evening. But no one knew what that math was actually being used for. 5:15 in the afternoon, Patrick kissed his wife and 3 children goodbye and drove off. He would only be gone for 64 minutes. But in those 64 minutes, everything this family had built would come apart. And it started right after a phone call that seemed like nothing at all. The smartwatch on Lindsay's wrist recorded the exact moment everything began. At 5:33, Patrick called his wife from the pharmacy. She didn't pick up. A minute later, she called him back. The conversation, he said, sounded normal, but he had a feeling she was in the middle of something. He just didn't know what. Right after that call ended, data from Lindsay's fitness watch recorded something else. She climbed exactly 3 flights of stairs inside the house, from the basement up to the living room, all the way to the bedroom on the 2nd floor. 3 flights in one continuous motion, no stopping. When investigators pieced together all of this data, the timeline was chillingly precise. No gaps, no hesitation. Every one of those 64 minutes could be accounted for. And within that window sat one cold fact prosecutors would later put into the jury directly. At any point in that sequence, Lindsay could have stopped. She could have put the phone down, walked out of the house, called for help for herself. She did none of these things. This was the moment a life could have bent in a completely different direction, and it didn't. And that's one of the hardest parts of this story to sit with. 6:09 in the evening, Patrick walked through his own front door. The first thing that unsettled him wasn't the sound. It was the complete absence of one. Anyone who's ever lived in a house with small children knows one thing. Total silence is never a good sign. Patrick stepped inside. No kids talking, no small feet running across the floor. He called out for his wife. No answer. He called her phone. Nothing. He went upstairs. The bedroom door was locked. When he got it open, the first thing he saw was blood on the floor, in front of a mirror. A window thrown wide open, letting the Massachusetts winter pour in. He walked to the window and looked down. And then he saw Lindsay, lying motionless on the frozen ground below, her wrists cut. This is the moment you heard at the start of this video. His wife, motionless beneath the window. But the most agonizing question was still waiting for him downstairs, in the basement. This was the moment the husband had to decide, in a split second, whether to save his wife first or go find his children. A choice no one should ever have to face. But Lindsay said one thing to him, just one short sentence. She told him the children were in the basement. Patrick called 911. Then he stepped back into the house and he started down the basement stairs. The call kept recording. What it captured over the next few minutes is something even the most seasoned investigators never wanted to hear a second time. Police still have the recording of that 911 call, and the sound of Patrick's voice on it stayed with people who had worked hundreds of cases. Here, I'm going to hold back. Out of respect for 3 children who cannot speak for themselves, I won't describe what Patrick found in that basement. What you need to know is this. His 3 children were down there, and by the time help arrived, it was already too late for them. The ambulances left with their sirens off. There was no reason left to hurry. 2 of the 3 were already gone. The baby was flown to Boston, kept alive on machines for a few more days in a room built for saving lives that, this time, couldn't. Then that last fragile thread gave out too. Somewhere in that basement, in the space of a few minutes, a father became the only member of his family left standing. There's something worth sitting with here. Some sounds, once a person has heard them, never fully leave. That's the quiet cost carried by first responders in every case like this. A wound no one else ever sees on them. For months afterward, the story was publicly told that a mother had tried to take her own life in the grip of an uncontrollable psychiatric break. But when investigators began reconstructing every inch of that scene, a very different picture began to emerge. For months, the public believed Lindsay had tried to end her life in the immediate aftermath of losing control. But the physical evidence at the scene told a different account entirely. The blood on the windowsill didn't show a jump. It showed her slowly climbing through the frame, gripping the sill before lowering herself down. Not an impulsive act, a controlled sequence of movements. The wounds on her wrists were shallow, not deep enough to threaten her life. And here I'll only say that the pattern of those injuries, according to the investigators, didn't match a single frantic moment of despair. It looked deliberate. That's the same image you pictured in the first seconds of this video. But under the light of forensic evidence, it no longer looked like someone trying to end her life in a panic. It looked staged. What investigators found next made the picture clearer. A trail of blood ran from the second floor window down the roof overhang, down the exterior wall. Proof she hadn't fallen freely. She had tried to hold on at least once before letting herself slide down. This is the twist that turned the entire case on its head. Prosecutors argued this wasn't a woman who had completely lost control in a psychiatric crisis. This was someone who had worked out the timing, the distance, and the degree of injury needed to be believed as a victim too. The line between genuine psychiatric break and a staged act is sometimes drawn by nothing more than a few inches of blood on a wall. That's why physical evidence in cases like this speaks louder than any account from anyone. But if this was really planned, then somewhere it had to leave a trail, and investigators found one right inside Lindsay's own phone. 4 days. That's how long it took between a search on Lindsay's phone and the death of her 3 children. She had typed one question into a search engine: can a sociopath be treated? No one knows what made her ask it, alone at that hour. But set beside her earlier journal entries, the resentment towards her older kids, the wish for more children someday, prosecutors called it no coincidence. It read like someone quietly asking a question about herself. Then came something even harder to explain away. Every doctor who treated her for months said the same thing. Not once had Lindsay mentioned hearing voices. Not once. Any hallucination. Nothing. The first time that changed was in a session with a psychiatrist hired by her own defense team. Days after that meeting, Lindsay picked up a phone and called her husband. What she told him would flip the entire case on its head all over again. Sometimes the smallest digital trace, one search, one journal entry, typed at midnight, ends up the most honest witness in the room. People can change their story. Data doesn't. Just days before the trial, Patrick got a missed call from a number he didn't recognize. When he called back, what he heard sent a chill down his spine. On the other end was Lindsay, calling from a psychologist's phone inside the hospital. Her voice was rushed, panicked. She told him she had heard a voice commanding her to harm the children and then herself. Patrick was standing alone along the shoreline when he took the call. Later, he described one thing about it. That voice didn't sound like his wife. No one can say for certain what was truly behind what Lindsay described. Was it a real command coming from somewhere deep in her mind? A place where reality had genuinely collapsed? Or was it something she said after realizing she was about to face a trial that would decide the rest of her life? That is the question no psychiatric expert for the prosecution or the defense could answer in total certainty.
With Lindsay
The line between a credible account and one built to serve a legal strategy is something even the most experienced forensic psychiatrists still argue over. And that is exactly what was about to play out in a courtroom, where one of the most formidable defense attorneys in the state was preparing for the hardest fight of his career. The attorney preparing to defend Lindsay Clancy once made a jury take days to convict a mass shooter, even after the same man had personally searched online for how to fake mental illness before he acted. If he could do that, what could he do with thousands of pages of Lindsay's medical records? His approach wasn't to deny what happened. He admitted Lindsay had done it. The entire weight of the trial would rest on one question alone. At the moment of the killings, was she capable of telling right from wrong? It's a defense that almost never works. In the history of American criminal law, only a handful of defendants, almost always mothers, almost never fathers, have ever convinced a jury to accept it. Alongside the criminal case, a separate civil lawsuit was aimed squarely at the medical team that treated Lindsay. It alleged that their overlapping, poorly monitored prescriptions were what pushed her to the edge. When the trial finally begins, the courtroom will be packed. Two completely opposing narratives will exist in the same room at the same time. One side will see a premeditated killer, the other will see a victim of a healthcare system that failed her completely. Not a single seasoned court reporter, after covering dozens of cases like this, would dare to guess which way the jury will lean. In the end, this isn't only a story about a mother and 3 children who are no longer here. It forces us to sit with a far more uncomfortable question. Where exactly is the line between illness and crime, and who has the right to draw it? Don't let this story leave you only with horror. Let it leave you with vigilance. Postpartum mental illness is real. It is serious, and it is too often missed, even by the people trained to catch it. If someone you love has just had a child and seems to be slipping somewhere dark, don't wait. Don't assume the system will catch them. Sometimes it doesn't. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to someone you trust or to a mental health support line in your country. You're not alone, and asking for help is never a weakness. So what do you think about this case? Where would you draw the line? Leave your thoughts in the comments. Oh, yeah. So what do you think about this case? Where would you draw the line? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story stayed with you, leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one.